this commission for Prince Lucerys.
I was very sorry to hear about your heir's death.
That's his son. Hey guys, welcome to the Bin Zone. On today's video, we're diving into a very tantalizing theory. The fact that a lesser known character might have some dragon blood running through his veins. That's right, there is a secret Targaryen, and we're talking about Alyn of Hall, who we were introduced to in the first episode of season 2, and the fact that he is maybe a secret Targaryen, most definitely the bastard son of Lord Corlys Velaryon, and that makes him the heir to Driftmark. That makes him the heir to House Velaryon, the richest house in the land, and that also makes him a dragon rider, because we know the Targaryens and the Velaryons are one and the same, and they have dragon blood coursing through their veins. But before we unravel the mystery of Alyn, we have to understand how that makes him a Targaryen, and that takes us back to the history of Westeros, where the conqueror Aegon and his two sister wives came to Westeros the first time and took over the Seven Kingdoms. Aegon's mother was of House Velaryon, and they also themselves had their kids marry Velaryons, and that sets the stage for Targaryens and Velaryons sharing DNA and ancestry for hundreds of years and being dragon riders, which also brings them into the lifestyle of the Targaryens, where they also intermarry and keep the bloodline pure. That's one of the main reasons why the Targaryens usually marry off to Velaryons, because they share the same bloodlines. They can keep it pure and they can keep the dragon powers, the dragon blood coursing through their family, which brings us to Corlys Velaryon. Because neither of his parents were Targaryens, he wasn't brought into the fold of House Targaryen. He went out, created a name for himself, made House Velaryon what it is today, marries Rhaenys Targaryen, not purely because he loved her, but because she was Targaryen and she was supposed to be the heir who sat on the Iron Throne, but we all know she became the queen that never was. And because she became the queen that never was, Corlys did not get his hands around the Iron Throne. We see this happen repeatedly with Corlys. When it's time for Viserys to find a new wife, instead of marrying Laena, he marries Alicent, costing Corlys the Iron Throne yet again. After that, we see Corlys marry Laenor off to Rhaenyra in order to have his son sit there, and we all know Laenor died. We're gonna get into Laenor a little later, because Laenor is the actual reason why I know for a fact that Alyn is a Targaryen and why he is a Velaryon. The show itself shows us in the way that Laenor exits the show and the way that Alyn's introduced. Matter of fact, let's just jump into that fact right now. Fast forward through the bloodlines of the Targaryens, we find ourselves here. Laenor and Laenor are dead. Lucerys Velaryon is also dead. Corlys' brother died at the hands of Daemon last season, so he has no heir, he has no dragon riders, and he's pretty much a broken man. And we see him walking through the shipyard at Hullstown, and looking around, everything he had, every claim to power that he had is pretty much dead or destroyed. And that's when we're introduced to Alyn's character. Alyn shows up and hands Corlys the sword of House Velaryon, the sword of the heir. And right there, I found that peculiar. I saw the similarities between that introduction and Laenor's introduction. When Laenor faked his own death and escaped, in order to blend in and not look like a Targaryen or Velaryon, he had to shave his head completely bald, not allowing the silver hair to grow. That way he can hide his identity, and he's able to live on in the world, and no one would know that he is a Targaryen or a Velaryon when he sails east to Essos. On the flip side, if you're a bastard of House Velaryon, and we know Rhaenys is a Targaryen who has a dragon, the best way to hide your identity would be to shave your head bald and work as a low-class citizen in the shipyard. The fact that the exodus of one son and the entrance of another is marked by bald heads is a wild way to connect the theory, but it works because we see how Corlys looks at him, and for a second, we kind of see they look alike. They have similar strong features. Their eyebrows are the same color, because we know the Targaryens and the Velaryons' eyebrows don't necessarily have to be silver, especially when it comes to House Velaryon. All of them had black eyebrows, white hair. You shave their hair bald, you just have the eyebrows. They're regular citizens for the most part. Corlys has lost everything. He lost hope, and now this character is introduced. And we see that the character not only is introduced, he knows of Corlys. He actually jumped and risked his life to save Corlys' life. What we know of this universe, what we know of the Game of Thrones universe, is the free folk rarely ever save the rich nobility out of the goodness of their heart. But if that's your father, and you know that's your father, you have to cut your hair bald because you know it's silver. You're gonna save your dad. And the fact that now your dad has no heirs whatsoever, you make your presence known. Before then, he couldn't say anything because that was being a bastard is a dishonor. And that's why Rhaenyra's in this war in the first place, because she had 3 of them. We know how the word bastard and how that's looked upon in this universe. But we also know that nobility and royalty love creating bastards. The Targaryens, that was one of their favorite pastimes, and Corlys has Targaryen blood running through his veins. Because he's married to Rhaenys, he can't really claim his bastards. That is a huge taboo to have bastards on a Targaryen. That is the whole reason why we're having the Dance of the Dragon in the first place. So he keeps his son hidden. He keeps his son among the small folk, but he also gives him a position on his ship. He also allows the son to be near him, and he raises him. So even though Alyn isn't royalty and living the high life, doesn't have a dragon, isn't going to these parties, he's near his father. And when his father has lost everything that he could possibly lose, lost all his children, his brother, his heir, if Corlys dies right now, his house is finished. There's no one else to inherit what he has. His house is finished as we know it, because now it gets passed on to Rhaenyra's 3rd bastard child, because he's also the son of Laenor. And we all know this brown-haired white kid is not Valerion. I mean, technically he has some Valerion blood because Rhaenyra has some, but he's not Corlys Valerion's ilk. And that forever changes and destroys his house. But with the introduction of Alyn, it brings up a new possibility here. Could Corlys now take his son under his wing and bring his son to light? Get his son the royal treatment that he needs? Give him a dragon? That's what Corlys would like to do. That's what's in the best interest of his house. However, there's a giant dragon in the room, and that dragon is called Meleys, and her rider, Rhaenys Targaryen, admitting that you've cheated on your wife, you fostered children out of wedlock, and now she has no kids, but you're like, nah, babe, we cool. The house is okay because I still got kids. You ain't got none no more. But I still have kids. That's not happening. Rhaenys would have Rhaena, who was supposed to marry Luke, be married off to Rhaenyra's 3rd bastard. At least that way it keeps House Targaryen, the direct House Targaryen of her lineage, in charge of Driftmark, in charge of the dragons, before she lets a branch of Valerion that she has no part in. I mean, technically she's Valerion because they share the same blood, but Corlys is illegitimate child with some rando sit where her kids are supposed to sit. She was already denied the throne. She was already denied the Iron Throne as the queen that never was. And now you're telling us that you're not going to have any of her direct descendants sit on Driftmark? That's not happening. Rhaenys is a Targaryen. And what do we know about Targaryens? Fire and blood reigns supreme. She'd sooner kill Corlys before she ever lets that happen. But we are in a time of war. We know a lot of dragons are gonna die. A lot of dragon riders are gonna die. We know that Vhagar is the biggest dragon and it can eat dragons in one bite. What happens when Rhaenyra starts to lose dragon riders? What happens when Team Black starts to lose? How is Corlys going to help save his house? He's going to have to introduce Alyn. He's going to have to put him at the front because they need bodies and they need blood. And if there's one thing we know about royalty and House of the Dragons and Game of Thrones in general, that whole universe, is if you have disposable dragon riders, you have bastard sons, you put them in the front lines and you use them, but you never give them the full rights that they deserve. But guys, that's just my theory about it. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and until next time, binge on.